Don't look now, but the New Orleans Pelicans have a good chance at getting a top 4 seed in the Western Conference playoffs. I'll tell you what needs to happen to make it a reality in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with you on this Tuesday, and we got a good show for you today. We're going to have some fun. Took a couple of your questions from the internet, from Twitter. We're going to answer them, but I want to look at if the Pelicans can make it into the top 4 in the Western Conference. And if you had asked me this question a week ago, I would have said no way. But now, with the Pelicans playing well and some injuries to other teams in the Western Conference, it's actually wide open, and I've got the numbers and the basically how many games the Pelicans need to win and other teams need to lose for them to get into the top 4. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Join the almost 10,000 of y'all on YouTube as well, and comment down below. Do you think the Pelicans are going to get into the top 4 here? Also got some other questions I'm going to want you to answer in today's show. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out at nissanusa.com. So let's get into it. Can the Pelicans get into the top 4? Again, a week ago, I would have said no. You only have 18 games left to go. They're 2.5 games out of the 4th seed. That's not as easy as it might sound. Yes, the Pelicans are playing well. Zion looks incredible. Brandon Ingram is doing his usual post-All-Star break, playing better, right? Herb Jones is Herb Jones. But it's less about the Pelicans and more about other teams. They don't exactly control their own destiny in this because they're going to need other teams to lose, and then they've got to take care of what they've got to take care of, which is winning games. So being, a week ago, last week, 3 games back with 20 games to go is actually tough to make up. It doesn't sound like it, but if teams keep winning at a level relative to what they've done this season and the Pelicans keep doing what they're doing, it's still tough. You're behind those teams for a reason. But then 2 injuries happened to teams above the New Orleans Pelicans. The Clippers lost Russell Westbrook and the Minnesota Timberwolves lost Karl-Anthony Towns. So let's start with the Wolves. I think it's going to be tough for them to slide out of the top 4, I'll be honest here. And I'm recording this while they're playing the Lakers. It's a close game, but it looks like they're going to lose to the Lakers. So that's going to kind of influence some of the numbers here. So adjust what I'm saying kind of depending on what happens in this game. As I'm talking about it, they're down by, looks like 12 when I'm recording this. So I think this is going to kind of be done, and that kind of influences the numbers a little bit here. So while Towns is a key player for the Timberwolves, their winning percentage this season is 68.8. That's really good. Before this Laker game, they're also 3-1 without Karl-Anthony Towns this season. They've won because of their very elite defense and because of Anthony Edwards, who's kind of broken out as a star player this season. They still got their defense. Towns wasn't really helping on that side of things. And Anthony Edwards is still Anthony Edwards. So those 2 things remain. Right now, they're 4.5 games ahead of the Pelicans with 17 games left to go if we count them losing to the Lakers here. If the Pelicans keep winning at the rate they're winning, which is 60.9%, so 609, while theirs is 688, right? That puts the Pelicans right at 50 wins with the amount of games they have left. We're rounding up. We're going to say they're going to get to 50 wins out of the remaining 18 here. Minnesota only needs to win 7 out of their final 17 games to finish ahead of the Pelicans. That's winning about 41% of their games. Despite losing Towns, winning 41% of their games when they have some easy teams remaining is definitely a doable thing, right? When you look at them, they still have games against the Pistons, the Wizards, the Raptors, 2 against the Jazz, 1 against the Rockets, 1 against the Atlanta Hawks. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 wins if they just beat all of those teams there. which they should. They'll be favored in all of those games, even without Karl-Anthony Towns. That puts them ahead of the New Orleans Pelicans. So it seems like it could happen. I'm not actually ruling this out, but I think it's going to be tough. The Clippers, on the other hand, are a different story. They're 3-2 without Russell Westbrook, and he's been key for them off the bench. And him taking over that role and excelling in that role off the bench in the wake of the James Harden trade is one of the reasons why they've been so good, and it's kind of unlocked them a little bit. You know, they struggled with James Harden with him in the lineup. They moved him to the bench, and that team started to look good. They're also led by Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who are playing the majority of games this season. They're not doing the usual rest and load management and all of that, right? They've been one of the hottest teams. But after the Pelicans win against Atlanta, the Pels are only 2.5 games back of the Los Angeles Clippers. You know, if the Pelicans keep winning at their current pace, the Clippers need to win 10 of their final 19 games to be one game ahead, finish with 51 wins. That's doable, but definitely not a certainty. That's 52% of their games. I think that's going to be they're going to be right at that mark if they can do that, I think, without Russell Westbrook. You know, complicating this too, we can't just go off the winning percentage we've seen so far. Strength of schedule does remain, and it's not exactly even, though it is close for all of these teams. So that kind of throws in another variable here, which does, I think, potentially open the door for the New Orleans Pelicans or hurt them in that regard. According to tankathon.com, and this is a very rudimentary strength of schedule kind of remaining metric, the Pelicans have the 9th toughest. The Clippers are one behind them at 10th and Minnesota at 14th. So when we factor in that Minnesota needs to win just 41% of their games and they have kind of a middle of the road schedule coming up and they've been a good team, they've won without Karl-Anthony Towns, I think they can definitely do that. The Clippers and the Pelicans kind of being in a similar strength of schedule, I think opens the door for the Pelicans to gain some ground. You know, and even if they don't end up finishing 4th, it seems certain that maybe they'll get a little bit closer than the current 2.5 games back. So I definitely think there's a realistic possibility that the Towns injury, I think it remains to be seen just on the type of impact that it's going to have on them. But again, we went through some of the teams that they have remaining that are more or less like guaranteed victories, even for a depleted Minnesota team. And they're going to be able to do that. You know, what does hurt Minnesota is they have 3 games against the Denver Nuggets, 2 against the Suns, 2 against the Lakers. The Lakers are, I guess it'll be 1 after this game, in the hunt and trying to be competitive. So those aren't going to be easy games for them whatsoever. You know, when it comes to the Clippers, the big game is Friday night in New Orleans. They take on the Pelicans. The Clippers and Pelicans play. That's a massive game because that's going to claw you 1 game back. They're 2.5 ahead going into that game. The Pels win. You're now 1.5 games back. That's the best way. The Pelicans don't fully control their own destiny, but that is a game that if they want to get 4th in the West, they're pretty much going to absolutely have to win. The Clippers play the Nuggets. They play the Timberwolves, right? Like that's a factor in there too. They play the Kings. The Kings are kind of sliding back a little bit, and they've got some very winnable games against other teams in the future. So it's going to come down to it. I think this is something that could come down to one of the final games of the regular season. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. It just means every game matters for the Pelicans. No more kind of throwing games away. It goes back to them kind of blowing leads early on in the season, those double-digit leads where they lost the game. If they finish 5th, 1-2 games out of that, we're going to point back on those kind of growing pains they had as, yeah, that really cost them and cost them home court advantage in the first round, which they may or may not need. But look, if you can get it, if you can have it, certainly not a bad thing. But I do think there's an outside chance, and not a bad one at that they could finish in the top 4 in the Western Conference. So every game's going to matter. That means you need to be listening to Locked On Pelicans. I'm a pro. You see how I did that right there? You know, we're going to be covering every single game here, breaking down what they need to do to keep winning. It's going to be a fun end of the year. So please tell a friend about the show. Get them clued into what's going on with this team. So coming up, next 2 segments, we're answering your questions, and we took a fun one coming up here next. Who wins in a Pels Battle Royale? Which player? Is there a mascot in there too? I'm going to give you my answer, but I want to use this as a jumping off point to talk about a guy like Najee Marshall because he's played some really good basketball recently and he deserves more credit. So that's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I want to talk to you about BetterHelp. This segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. And this one's simple. Herb Jones needs to be on the NBA's all-defensive first team, not second team, first team. This dude has been that good this year. He'll never want to kind of go and say that himself. He doesn't care about the accolades. We care. This matters. This is important to players' legacies. We're going to advocate for him if others won't do it. Herb Jones, all defensive first team. So therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get started. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this New Orleans Pelicans team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join the almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Comment down below. Let me know, who do you think is going to win a Pelicans Battle Royale? I'm going to throw some out there for you. I got a couple of names here in mind on this one. I'm curious what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Become an everyday or listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. No one else comes to y'all like this. So please subscribe, share the show around, all of those things. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. We got a listener question here. I put out the call the other day. I had some technical difficulties on Friday's show, so I wanted to jump back in and answer some of these questions here. So this one comes from AJ Talks Noise. AJ Talks Noise was a good name, actually. She, I'm not sure, it says Pelicans Battle Royale, no weapons, who wins? I got my money on King Cake Baby with Najee being second. King Cake Baby's a baby. I don't know if he can actually fight and kind of fend for himself. If I'm assuming they're all dropped on an island, let's call it the Fortnite Island, whatever here, and kind of in a hand-to-hand fight. We're going to rule out the baby. Also, it would be inappropriate for any Pelicans player to actually kill a baby, so we don't want that sort of thing here. Najee, I think, is a really good choice. Right? His nickname is The Knife. He won't have a knife in this hypothetical Battle Royale situation. But it's a dude that just doesn't give up, right? It's a guy that just goes out and plays his hardest and has carved out a really strong role in the NBA when you kind of look at him. And look, at times there's kind of a lack of skill on his end, but makes up for it in other areas. And we saw against the Miami Heat, he's willing to fight and willing to go to war for this team. And the players respond to that. They love that, and they kind of feed off of his energy. But one thing you've really seen from him this season is developing, strong chemistry with Zion Williamson, and I think that's a really wonderful thing, right? Everything, in my opinion, needs to be built around Zion. There's BI too, but really it kind of starts first with Zion Williamson. And so for him to have that kind of chemistry with Zion, be able to play well with Zion Williamson, look, that's smart. That means he's going to get on the court. Along with some of the defensive effort that he gives you, that's the type of stuff that head coach Willie Green absolutely loves and has put him in there. He's also shooting the ball well this season, and I think that's important too. You need shooting, you need scoring, you need guys that can go out and do that sort of stuff. So Najee Marshall, kind of adding to his offensive game, at times being straight up a weapon out there. Not like always, right? But he's definitely done a very good job, again, shooting the three ball better than he ever has at any point in his career. He's shooting 39% from three on 2.3 attempts per game. He's basically making almost a three per. I think that's a really useful kind of player here. The off-ball instincts he has to cut, to see that chemistry with Zion, to know when Zion's drawing two guys and he should cut down, I think is something that is a really important piece for this team. And he's a reason why these bench lineups for the Pelicans are consistently smoking opponents, destroying those opponents here. So I love what we've seen from him this year. I don't know if the Pelicans can keep him going into this next season. He's a free agent. He's in line for a bigger payday. They're going to be right up against the luxury tax, if not in it. Would I pay it to keep Najee Marshall? Yeah, probably this season or next season, I think, if you can't fill that role elsewhere. But this is also something that if he walks, maybe they should have looked at trading him during the trade deadline, but that would have made you a worse team this season. And that's something I've consistently said I did not want to see them do, and I'm glad they didn't. It's also why I'm glad they didn't trade Jonas Valanciunas. But Najee has been really good for this team this season, and that three-point shooting and being much more of an offensive threat is a real big part of why. So here's my take, though, on the Battle Royale question. We use that just to talk about Najee here. I wouldn't put Najee winning. I have it as maybe a toss-up for Zion Williamson and Jonas Valanciunas. Part of it with Zion is like, how do you stop that guy in anything? He's just, especially this version of Zion, slimmer, looking really good, in really good shape. Is anyone capable of basically getting him to tap out and incapacitating him? I don't really think so, right? Rudy Gobert, one of the better defenders in the league, who just got fined $100,000, by the way, for the Timberwolves, can't stop him. Right? He makes Rudy Gobert fly backwards when Rudy Gobert tries to contest his shots. How's anyone going to kind of put that guy down? It's not going to happen, right? I think the other reason why you would go with a dude like Jonas Valanciunas is, have you seen him? He's huge. He's terrifying looking, right? Looks like a character, a John Wick kind of character, the Eastern European, henchman for the Bond villain or something like that. The beard is very intimidating. When he gets upset, you kind of see him shoot looks to players, refs. You don't want to mess with that dude. Is anyone going to be able to take him down with just the size and strength that he has? It's Zion or Jonas are the guys that I would have winning a Pelicans Battle Royale. I'm curious what you think. Let me know in the comments down below. But the fact that this is an open question, that you can throw Najee in there too, right? Herb Jones would be on the island being leave me alone. I'm just fishing. So we're not going to kind of factor him in there too. And everyone loves Herb, so no one would be trying to do that either. I think is a good kind of it tells you a little bit about the toughness in some of the guys that are on this team. They're not easy to contend with. And this is a team that probably doesn't utilize a guy like Jonas Valanciunas to the absolute fullest here. So I don't know. That kind of says something. When I was thinking about this question, I wanted to use it just to kind of talk about Najee Marshall. But then you kind of think about the overall toughness and things like that of this Pelicans team. That makes you feel kind of happy and good about their cases when the playoffs maybe get a little bit more physical. It doesn't get too much more physical in the playoffs, but they let calls go more. Having dudes that can kind of withstand all of that in hopefully Zion, in Jonas Valanciunas, who I think might be a bit of a playoff liability, but still going to play a key role for the team. Yeah, those dudes are tough to take down. That's good to have those kind of guys on this roster, and I think kind of adds a little bit of toughness to this team that maybe in years past has been missing, but you're definitely seeing it this year. So let me know who you think wins in a Pelicans Battle Royale. So, couple more questions here. I got two more, including one from our good friend ABJ504. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. There's the 2024 Nissan Rogue, perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. So gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. There's also the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder, which has room for up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. With 284 horsepower, that's a good number, and up to 6,000 pounds towing when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well, where there's almost 10,000 of y'all It's going to be a fun end to the year. We're excited to see the Pelicans in the postseason here, hopefully avoiding the play-in tournament. Become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans and tell a friend about the show. Send them this show, yesterday's show, the one where we talked about the net rating. Those are all great episodes. If you haven't listened to them already, get a friend clued into what's going on around this team because it's going to be a fun end of the year. And this team's just fun to watch right now. So we're answering some more of your questions here. First, though, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, 2 more questions here as we start to wrap up the show. I'm actually going to answer this one. We're going to flip the order that I wanted to do here. This one comes from @MarkA.Rudd. With the potential return of Dyson this season, do you think Coach Willie Green will lose his new focus on offense helping defense? So when he says offense helping defense, this is something you've heard me talk about all season long, right? The usual kind of cliche, I don't know what the exact right word to use is that like good defense leads to easy offense. And that is very true, right? You get a steal. Herb Jones is the perfect example of this. We talked about this in yesterday's show if you're an everydayer. Herb Jones leads the team in fast break points per game. It's because he pokes the ball away, gets steals, and then just runs down and dunks it or lays it up himself, right? A lot of it comes from just stuff he self-creates. Transition offense like that is the easiest offense you can get in the NBA. It is the most efficient offense in the NBA. It scores a higher points per possession than almost anything else. You want as much of that as possible. Make the most of every possession that you get the ball. Transition opportunities in the NBA are exactly that. So Herb does generate a ton of that, and it gives the Pelicans easy points. That's great defense leading to easy offense. But you have to play good defense in the first place. And guess what? That's often indexed off of how your offense is doing, right? Think about the flip side of this. You know, you're the opponent. The Pelicans just forced to steal, and then they got easy points. So your bad offense by turning the ball over just killed your defense because transition defense is really, really hard. You don't want that. Well, what's the best way to avoid that, right? Teams can run off of missed shots and get defensive rebounds and go too. That's still transition. It's, a little bit better than off a live ball turnover, but it's still transition. So the best way to do this is score buckets. When you score a bucket, the ball goes through the hoop, and then what has to happen? The refs get the ball or the other team gets the ball, and they have to inbound the ball. So they got to give the ball to someone who's standing outside. They're going to take a second to inbound the ball. It used to be even better when the ref you need to give the ball to the ref, then to the other player. You don't need to do that anymore. But you definitely see it where it slows things down for that offense. And so while they're inbounding the ball, your defense is running back and getting set and is ready to force another turnover, another steal, whatever it might be, and you get easy points that way. So when Willie Green leans too defensively and tries to get stops that way, at times it's frustrating because, well, if you scored more points, maybe your defense would be better with the guys that you have out there on the court. And that was a problem earlier on in the season. And then there was definitely a point, and he said it, and we've talked about this on the show if you're an everydayer, against the Indiana Pacers where he said between quarters, no, the defense wasn't bad. We gave up 42, I think, in that quarter. It wasn't the defense. It was the offense was struggling and turning the ball over, and they just ran in transition and scored. And then the next game when they played the Indiana Pacers and didn't do that, it was a complete 180 of that game, and Tyrese Halliburton struggled. I don't think he scored a point in that game. Is that correct? Because he couldn't get out in transition and run where he tore New Orleans apart in the first game. I love being able to see those 2 Pacers games back to back for that. So when Dyson Daniels returns, and he's not an offensive threat, he's a great defensive player, do you lose some of that balance? And I think you might. I also wonder if he's going to get minutes right away. And I don't think he will. He's going to return likely closer to the end of the regular season if he does. And I'm not using this to give you an update. I don't really have anything on Dyson Daniels right now. One of the things I've said repeatedly on why we're maybe seeing a lack of adjustments from Willie Green on certain things, and there are adjustments going on, sometimes they're just not as obvious, is they're winning games. Do you rock the boat and do you really change things? And I think the answer to that is no. So when Dyson Daniels returns and isn't going to be exactly in game shape, if you're trying to win games, and they're going to need to down the stretch, we just talked about this in the first bit of the show, right? Like they need to, if they keep winning, they're going to be fighting for a top 4 spot. Do you rock that boat, introduce a player who's maybe not ready for that, and then you lose a game because of it, and now you're not top 4? I don't think they're going to mess with things. I think they're just going to kind of keep doing what's working, and I don't have a problem with that. So, yeah, Dyson will come back, and Willie Green will want to play him because he definitely does and loves those defensive guys, but I don't think he's going to rock the boat too much. I think he knows this is working and doesn't want to change things too much, and that's why you haven't seen some bigger, more dramatic changes at times this season either. If you're winning basically 61% of your games, you don't need to tweak too much. Just keep doing that. Keep doing that and keep winning 61% of your games. And figure it out in the playoffs if you need to make bigger changes or something like that, where I think it's a little bit easier to do that and you risk less upsetting the apple cart with all of that. So final question here. And this one comes from ABJ504 on Twitter. He's going to probably say comment down below. Hey, buddy. And he says, comment, is there any bragging rights with the other Locked On hosts when you win a series or in the regular season or playoffs? We talk some trash to each other, but in general, there's a lot of camaraderie on the network. I'm not going to name names here, but you can try and guess in the comments down below. A bunch of the hosts were together this past weekend somewhere. I'm not going to say any more than this. And I think from where they were calling me, it was 12:30, after midnight. And I got a call and they were in a state of mind and screaming at me over the phone in a very fun way. And it was 3-4 hosts there. And I loved it, right? That's how close the network is. So there's some good friendly trash talking there. I think one of the things that we kind of love the most that the Pelicans haven't done yet, and if they do somehow get it this season, you'll see it on the show. We have this kind of internal thing called the NBA belt. And it was started by John Krause of Locked On Celtics, my co-host on Locked On NBA on Wednesdays. Go listen to that on Wednesdays, by the way, where the defending champion comes in wearing a belt. It's like a WWE title belt, heavyweight title belt, something like that. You get the belt when you beat the current belt holder. So the Nuggets come into the season holding the belt, and then whatever team beats them gets the belt, and they have that until another team beats them, and they hold it till another team beats them, and it kind of just gets passed around throughout the season. So one of the things we created, because we enjoyed this so much, is the team that currently holds it gets an extra graphic on their Locked On show. So if you're watching on YouTube here, you see the little... There it is. The rundown of the show. You see Locked On at the top, Locked On Pelicans right there. Watch next, Locked On NBA, all those things. If the Pelicans ever hold the belt, and they haven't held it this season, I don't think they held it at any point last season either, we'll have a little belt on here on the show. So there's some trash talking. There's definitely some trash talking, but in general, we all really like each other. We all really like working for Locked On. This is a great network to be a part of. So there's a lot of camaraderie there. There's some friendly trash talking, but the bragging rights definitely exist. Someone will say something and we have a couple group chats, and then someone says something about a team, then everyone kind of makes a joke about them if that team loses, or the team that just beat them is you sure about that sort of stuff? So yeah, there's a little bit of that, but there's a lot of camaraderie between the Locked On hosts when we do crossovers and things like that. I hope y'all can kind of see that and feel that from when we talk to one another, because it's a lot of fun. I know in the past, a couple of Eastern Conference hosts have kind of adopted the Pelicans as their Western Conference team. Sean Woodley of Locked On Raptors has done that for a while, partially because he loves how weird King Cake Baby is. I knew Koo Cahill of Locked On Pistons likes the Pelicans as well. So yeah, it's a lot of fun being part of the network, and we talk a little bit of trash. Feel free whenever you want. All the hosts will love this. If the Pelicans get a big victory over a Locked On team, go to their YouTube page on the show where they're recapping that game and type in Go Pels in the comments. One, you help their show, right? You help their show, and it boosts them, boosts the network, and you get to talk a little bit of trash, and we're all happy with that. They see that. They usually reach out to one another when that sort of stuff happens to kind of laugh about it because we like it. So go talk trash to the other hosts. You're allowed to do that as well. So that's where we're going to end Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Be back with y'all tomorrow. It'll be a game day for the Pelicans as they're back in action taking on the Cavaliers. We'll talk about that game, a couple of other things as well. Going to be a lot of fun this week on Locked On, so subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.